Welcome back, friends, to another edition of the Marc Clair Show. Start your Mondays right with me, Marc Clair, where I do my best anyway to have an interesting, thought-provoking conversation every single week. I'm pretty sure we accomplished that today with my friend Bird from Timeline Earth. Before I get to him, I got to get to this right here. If you're watching the video, Fox and Sons. Fox and Sons is almost entirely responsible for the show. Not only are they the sponsors of the show from day one, but the caffeine that I get every day from my Fox and Sons literally gives me the energy to do this show. Let me tell you, if you like coffee, you got to stop what you're doing. I don't know where you're getting your coffee. I hope you're not getting these Folgers crystals I've been hearing about. I'd be careful about those. I hope to God you're not spending $5-6 at Starbucks every single day, because all you got to do is go to foxandsons.com, foxnsons.com, pick out a bag, pick out a couple bags, try a Tanzanian pea berry. It's pretty good. Brazilian honey prep. Sounds sweet. It's not sweet. It's amazing. Den Blend Dark, that's my chosen bean, but I've tried a bunch of them. They're all fantastic. You're going to love them. If you like coffee, you're going to love Fox & Sons. So head over to foxandsons.com, and I want you to use this discount code. It is MCS, Marc Clair Show. Use discount code MCS for 18. That's right, my friends. 18% off your order. You can't do better. Enjoy my conversation with Bird from Timeline Earth.
Well, let me tell you about my anxiety about this.
I think that's a good place to start.
What do they call that? A cold open?
Yeah, when the show's just go. Yeah, cold open is when the show has just started and no one really, there's no explanation of what's going on. There's no intro. There's no, hey, welcome. It's just happening, you know?
I get so nervous about the part where I have to speak for the first time. So you'll do, what's up, everybody? It's Marc. Today we got this guy. How are you doing? And I have to go, I'm doing great, Marc. And then you have to take a strategic pause, and then you have to talk like a normal person. So I've always just preferred to roll into it, because that throws me off so much, because then for the next 10 minutes, I'm going, somebody on Joe Rogan said their hello exactly like you did. You're a poser. You're a fake. You're a terrible podcaster. I don't like it. So let's roll in.
I think we already have. I think we're already. I think I shouldn't even point out. I think we shouldn't even talk about the fact that we're on a show anymore. We shouldn't even. We should try to forget it. As hard as that is to.
Can we forget? Yeah, let's forget it and let's just talk like bros.
Let's talk like bros. My bro Ronaldo,
because I haven't seen you in a while.
I still haven't seen you. Now I only see an avatar.
We attended a wedding a long time ago. And now we're here together, or maybe that was an engagement party. I'm not really sure what that was.
I don't know if it was actually any of those things, but we decided it was.
That's what it was. And so we had a great time. And then that was it. And now we're back.
now we're here. That's the entire history of Marc and Bird in 30 seconds or less.
We have an incredible relationship.
It's been blossoming. Let's just put it that way. How about the wind's been treating you there in Miami?
I don't like Miami.
Okay, that's interesting. That's what I wanted to hear.
I loved Miami when we talked about it.
I want you as miserable as possible.
Yes. I've officially off the Miami bandwagon.
Really? That fast? How long has it been? Even a year? You're already trying to flap out of there?
Year and some. Got to get out of Miami. We got to go to the sticks. We got to go somewhere more rural.
I think that's the next evolution, because I think a lot of people are doing the whole, let's just move to a red state thing, right? And then that's as far as they think. And then suddenly they show up in a red state, but you're still like, oh, you're still in this place and it's weird and there's still people around you. And when the shit hits the fan, those people might still kill you. And they're still going to go and buy toilet paper when there's a pandemic, no matter where you are, if you're in civilization.
I have to argue with people to buy stuff in Miami.
I think we should start with
me stuff.
Do you have a recent fast food experience you could share with us? Because you always have so many. And
I actually do have a recent fast food experience.
Did I know? All right, let's go into that.
It was 3 nights ago. It was the McDonald's drive-through. So I go to 2 different McDonald's drive-throughs. There's one that's close. There's one that's far.
Did you ever go on the same day?
That's far away. Yes, I have gone on the same day, because one of them salts their fries and the other does not salt their fries. So sometimes you got to hit both to get everything you want to get. 2 or 3 nights ago, 2 or 3 nights ago. Oh, maybe it was last night. It was the night we recorded TLE. After that, I don't usually cook that day because it's just a lot of work to do the recording. So I don't cook. So I'll go out and get something. And it was McDonald's time. I'll go to either the near or far one. The far one I'll go to, and I'll do like accents when I order. Accents, like all kinds of worldly accents, just to practice. The one that's near, I'll go to, and I try to be normal. Well, I'm in the car, and I roll up a J, and I go through the drive-thru like I usually do, because I want to look cool when I go through the drive-thru. I want to be, hitting the J.
You don't want them to think you're just some guy getting dinner.
No, I want them to know
what's going on here.
Right. So behind me pulls up a cop car in the ordering line. So I freak out, and I realize if I leave, they're gonna get me because they're gonna look at me. If I stay in the lane, they're gonna see that I've hotboxed the vehicle when I go to open it to speak to the person. So it's like a skit. So I get up to the
This is a legitimate scary situation, especially
it's really scary
in the state you're in at that point. It's absolutely
especially when you're not registered.
From what I've heard
in the state. Right. I eventually I get to the part where I have to order, and they're right behind me. And if I open the window, it's gonna smell everything like that. So I pull up, and the woman goes, like, "Can you roll down your window?" And I chickened out, and I sped off because there was nobody in front of me. So I didn't get my food. I knew if I was going to open that window, I was going to jail that night. So I'm foodless. I'm sorry to say I didn't get arrested. Yeah, I had to.
What a sad fast food story that ends in no food. But I think you made the right choice.
No food.
You probably, in reality, would have been fine, but your fear level you wouldn't have been able to eat the food. It would have been horrible at night either way. So
it would have been bad. And this is the worst of the two McDonald's anyway.
What did you do? Did you just not eat? Did you order something? Did you just
went back home.
It's over. It's over today.
It scared the shit out of me, dude.
Yeah.
It scared me a lot in the moment because there was, for some reason, I couldn't do anything. I had to kind of pretend it was normal. And it scared the shit out of me.
I mean, that's another downside. You're in a place where, no joke, you can actually still go to jail for that thing.
I know.
For real. It's possible.
I'm from the streets. That's right. I'm very much from the streets. Ronaldo Ciroc.
You don't get registered
really from the streets.
Things. Yeah, no.
No, I haven't registered for anything.
You don't use your real voice at McDonald's, and you don't register for anything you're going to smoke.
And that's the way.
Well, speaking of keeping it real, Al, a few weeks ago, I'm just going to set the premise here. A few weeks ago, I saw you tweet out a picture of several books. I was intrigued by this. First of all, I didn't know you were a reader. That's not true. I know you read. But seeing this array of books, they caught my eye. And a few of them stood out, but I decided to let you choose which one to talk about today. And by the way, after today, I will have had exactly 50% of the hosts of Timeline Earth on this podcast.
I was going to ask you. It's me and Paz. I thought you had Aaron on.
Not yet. So I need.
Okay.
So what we're gonna need is Aaron and Carr because I'm only on Twitter. I don't really participate in any other form of media in real life or social at this point. Aaron and or Carr should at some point in their lives tweet something that might catch my eye, something esoteric, something weird, and then maybe I'll say, hey, you want to come talk about that? That's how this show works. That's how this entire show works. So you did that, and now you're here.
Yeah, you wanted me to read. Well, first of all, I wanted to read Akhenaten, the Spirit King, or whatever it was called.
That was the first selection.
Yeah. It was a novel. It was a fiction novel.
Yeah, we don't.
And I felt that wasn't good. Instead, we've picked a completely non-fictional novel.
We want stuff that's either true or at least that the person writing it really thinks it's true. One of the
really thinks it's true. And we'll dissect whether or not we really do think that after all. So now what I'm thinking is there were a lot of things that were on the table. We had the other book. What was the other book about? Do you have the photo?
I'm trying to scroll back. I don't think so. I have our conversation, but I don't think the actual tweet is in the conversation.
I don't know which book it was. It had something to do with druids, I think. Something about druids. I just find that really boring. So we decided we were going to read, many will describe it as the seminal text of the ancient aliens theory of the modern era. That's right. We were going to read
I don't know if
Chariots of the Gods or whatever it was called.
Well, Chariots of the God is the seminal text. This is like this is like his books, like eight books later, when he's just trying to write more books because he has no other job, he has no other skill except talk about ancient aliens. So he just continued to write books. This one is getting close to, as we'll see, what's the full title? The Twilight of the Gods. Gotta go all the way.
The Mayan civilization and calendar or something like that.
The Mayan calendar and the return of the extraterrestrials. So
he's the return of the extraterrestrials.
He's really laying it out here in the title. He's telling you what's happening.
So this is where I'm at with it. When I text you, I'm like, oh, we gotta read Chariots of the Gods. This is the seminal text of ancient alien theory. And then I open it up, and the first line is like, man, I'm so pleased to be bringing you my 25th book. And something clicked there, and I was like, oh no, this can't be right. This has to be an earlier book than 25. And then I Googled the title. Mark, I couldn't even find a Spark Notes for this book. Nobody has read this book other than us.
This is
hilarious.
I
haven't even finished it.
This whole time, I thought to myself, it's funny that he's choosing his like 83rd book or something and not the original. But I'm like, you know what? Maybe he's well versed in his work. He's seen all the old stuff. He's going to the new stuff here. So you actually thought you were purchasing Chariot of the Gods, the actual original, pretty much modern ancient alien text, whereas it is at least the same author, and you're on the right track. And he has
the same
author.
Title. And it's the same title, and that's on purpose.
And to be honest, it's the same book. I mean, it's the same book.
That's the thing.
So
it's the same. This is one of those books.
He's written this book 25 times.
Yes, he takes pleasure in saying that he's written 25 books. And what I suspected this is that instead of releasing another edition of the first book, which doesn't count as your 25th book, it's just a different edition, he just writes slightly different titles and picks one aspect of the original book to write slightly more about, because there's so much in this book that has nothing to do with Mayans. It just takes place in the same place that the Mayans were at one time in history. So I don't know how deep you want to get into this. I went really deep into chapters 1 through 3. There's 5 chapters total. The 4th chapter deals with the return of the gods, and the 5th chapter is a wrap-up that ties everything together. I didn't even get to chapter 4. I have 1 through 3. The first one is about all the mythologies that have aliens and stuff coming down. The second one is about how all of those mythologies that have aliens coming down also have stories about how the aliens built megastructures. The 3rd chapter is about the Mayan calendar. And it doesn't connect the two things that I read beforehand together until the last sentence, which is basically this timeline that's given by the Mayan calendar is very accurate, so it has to be extraterrestrial technology. So it was a very, very frustrating read at the high level here, because I don't know about you, Mark, but I've watched Ancient Aliens on the History Channel.
I've seen an episode or 50 in my day.
I've seen every single one of the episodes, and every single episode was a longer version of a chapter of this book, a sub-chapter even. So this is not the seminal text.
No.
This is the newest, this was the
24th iteration of it's in 2015.
This was written really recently, this book.
Hold on a second here.
It might even be more recently than that.
Was this actually okay? This makes sense. It was written in 2010, which is what I thought. So the interesting, because you know what he's doing with this. He's in a few years prior to the year 2012. All the hype started happening because for so long, people like Erich von Däniken have been talking about the 2012 and the Mayan calendar thing. So there was probably thousands of books written about 2012, the Mayan calendar, the coming apocalypse, yada yada. I mean, there was the movie with what's his name. The guy, Ferris, whatever.
Mel Gibson.
No, but I wish that would have been so much. That would have been incredible. I want to see Mel Gibson battling the ancient apocalypse as the aliens descend upon us. That is what I want to see.
You ever see Battlefield Earth? Because that's kind of what you're asking for, just without Mel. You got to watch Battlefield Earth.
But what's the one directed by Mel that is about the Mayans?
Apocalypto.
That is a movie. That is a movie right
That
now.
movie.
That's
that
what we should be
movie,
reviewing today.
If that's not on your top 100 movies, suspect.
Top 100 is being very charitable. Being very, very charitable. Yes.
I don't want to be too condemning.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's got to be top 5, but if it's not in your wheelhouse, I think there's questions to be asked for sure. For sure. So this is written in 2010. So clearly he's trying to capitalize on the Mayan calendar thing. But it's interesting how, I mean, you didn't miss too much in the last couple chapters here. Like you said, he does sort of tie it all in together, but it's really just a lot of reiterating of some things he broke down earlier about the Mayan calendar. But he sort of also, because he's probably thinking a couple things here. He's like, yeah, I want to capitalize on this Mayan thing, and their shit was really accurate. And 2012's coming, so I'm gonna say, hey, maybe they were right. Maybe the gods are coming back in 2012. However, he also hedges his bets quite a bit by putting out a bunch of different interpretations of the Mayan calendar, some of which say it's really 2045, some of which say it's really... So that way, even if 2012 passes, as it seemingly did, depending on who you ask, and not much really changed, then Erich von Däniken can still be here saying, well, I guess it wasn't that one. It was actually maybe one of these other ones. So we're maybe looking at a 2035, 2045 return of the aliens.
Yeah, there's a lot of different times that are, I don't mind that as much. I'll tell you why. Maybe he's hedging his bets on the thesis of this book, but he also talks about how the Mayans were doing like genetic engineering and creating hybrid chimeras.
He does get into that quite a bit, yeah. That's
If you hedge on one thing, but you say the other thing, it still convinces me that he really does believe the whole shtick. And I did want to open up the entire conversation because I really think that the key to understanding this book is the line about the chimeras.
Okay. Yes. Let us open the entire conversation.
His whole thing is that there's stories everywhere, all over the world, about these chimeric beings, right?
Indeed.
Chimeric beings are basically like they have a donkey's head and they have the toes of a giraffe. And they have a human body.
Yeah.
There's just it's science experiments basically.
It's Mr. Potato Head with every animal part available to you.
So this is actually chapter 3. So I'm getting really into it, but again, I told you chapter 3 is barely related to the first 2. What he's trying to prove here is modern genetic engineering, things like trying to get rid of Alzheimer's, trying to get rid of multiple sclerosis, were already being created during the time of the Mayans. And to evidence this, he talks all about the practices of mummification. He talks about the attempts to use clones, human clones, to create, stem cells and livers and all kinds of things that you need. He hypothesizes that the extraterrestrials created many forms of life to seed this planet, and that some didn't go very well. And eventually human beings were the last one, and that they carry on some of these genetic engineering traditions. What does this have to do with the Mayan calendar? Not a thing.
Nothing
Not
whatsoever.
one thing. The entirety of chapter 3 has nothing to do with the Mayan calendar.
But it is, as you said, maybe the most intriguing part of this book. And especially as someone like yourself coming from arguably the world's foremost cryptid tracking podcast, does this sort of tickle that thoughts of all the cryptids you've thought about over the years, that encountered in digital space at least, or I don't know if you've had any real life encounters, but that's what immediately came to my mind. The idea that so many things went wrong. Well, what of those things that went wrong, or some of them are kind of still hanging around in the woods somewhere?
This is why you're the best in the business, because that is exactly my point.
Yeah.
This is why you make the big bucks, because it's exactly my point. In the pivotal section of the book, chapter 2.5 is the center of the book. There's 5 total chapters. Chapter 2 is also the shortest chapter in the book. You can breeze by it in maybe 30 minutes. It's really quick, and this is almost a 300-page book. So he talks about the chimeras, and this is the claim that I say is the center of this book. The extraterrestrials were probably only 30 or 40 years ahead of today's geneticists. That is a core claim at the very center of the book when he talks about genetic hybridization, when he talks about hybrid creatures and bringing extinct creatures back to life, and when he talks about how hybrid organisms and the treatment of them reflect on the societal and legal surroundings of the time. So he's drawing all these parallels, and he's talking about the various creatures that human beings end up worshiping. The Apis bull is one, for instance, that he talks about the worship of. And what he's saying, and this is the long way around to this.
Well, he takes the long way around to everything, because
way around.
His books could be probably a 30-page pamphlet, but he kind of goes on these little. And I'm not even arguing this. What do you think of Erich von Däniken's writing style? I would describe it as gleeful. He seems to really enjoys like
loves
talking.
What he does.
He loves this shit. He loves it, which
loves what he does.
Sort of make me think maybe he is a true believer.
Yes,
he's just got nothing else to talk about. So this is why we get all these books.
This is why he's interested. He the way he writes, he can't wait to tell you the point, but he never tells you the point. He sort of circles around it.
He's like the meme. He's like the author version of the meme of like the guy talking to the chick at the bar and going on this whole rant about whatever it may be. That's Erich von Däniken, and exactly. Yes. That's him, but he didn't have a bar to go to, or the internet even. He just wrote books and put them out there.
So let me break it down why I think chapter 2 is so important, because there's a hidden prophecy in here. 30 or 40 years ahead of today's geneticists, right? He's talking about the worshiping of these creatures, these creations that have been made by science. And he's talking about 30 or 40 years ahead. What he's basically saying is that in the time that the Mayan calendar so predicts the world will end, our geneticists will also have gotten to the point where they are also creating these creatures of worship. Now, what Däniken doesn't, I'm going to blow your mind here. What Däniken doesn't consider, because he's from an era of the analogical. He's an older guy. He doesn't exactly understand the implications, but there are some ancient religious traditions that talk about virtuality, the concept not of the physical, but the virtual. You see this a lot in demonology in the Middle Ages. A lot of claims that demons aren't physical, that demons are metaphysical, or that they're rule benders in the universe. What Däniken is talking about is that the worship of these created entities, genetic in his case, but I think it's something a little bit more analogical. I think he's predicting that the time of the Mayan calendar's prediction of the end of the world arises when artificial intelligence becomes a source of worship in the general population 30 or 40 years from now, when there's finally enough knowledge to take human DNA, the true source of knowledge for humankind, and encode it into artificial intelligence, thereby making the creature of worship in the world. He doesn't say this in the book, but read chapter 2 and tell me that it really comes from nowhere. There's something in this. You have to read into it.
What's funny is that that's a far more interesting premise than than the connections he actually makes in the book. But you're right. I mean, he doesn't say it that way, but he says it in his own way, which, like you said, his own way. He has his mind. He's not in the digital realm. He's only thinking about, taking DNA and splicing them together in this way. But you're only a step away, like you said, from putting that into the digital space. And if you're splicing the DNA, if you can splice, now my mind is just racing here, because now I'm talking
That's
about.
What I'm saying.
We're talking about, because we're already, maybe he's ostensibly in this book. In his mind, he's talking more about the Jurassic Park maybe type stuff. He's talking about getting the woolly, which they're doing also. They're doing the woolly mammoth stuff. It's a reflection
of his age. It's and that kind of illustration that he chooses is a reflection of the fact that he comes from a time when the language wasn't available. And for instance, when we go 2,000 or 3,000 years in the past, we call that kind of thing mythology, not because it's false, but because it's analogical. It can't speak contextually to us. It can only speak in terms of what it has in that period of time. Von Däniken is doing that 60 or 70 years ago. I don't know how old he is. He's doing that like 40 years ago.
I'll tell you how
he just
old
wrote
he
this
is.
book this year, but he's an old guy.
He's 88. He was born in
Is he
1930.
really?
He was born in 1935, and he is still kicking.
He grew up in a different time when Jurassic Park was the height of genetic engineering. And now we are in a time
that was
when
the height of what you could
understand-
imagine. You know, that was
Even
the height
imagine.
of science fiction.
Even imagine. Now we can talk of virtuality and the metaverse and the creatures created within, which is much. And the reason why I say this is because what are we actually closer to? Functional chimeras. And I keep in mind, a chimera had a lion's head and a horse body or something like that, and the wings of an eagle. In 40 years, are we going to be able to create that physically? Of course not. They promised us hovercrafts. We'll never get the hovercrafts either. However, the metaverse is proving that we can de-fictionalize these things into experience. And all the entire story, when they go and they build the bronze serpent that they worship, is that the bronze serpent isn't alive. It's an object of worship. People worship objects. There's no difference in the virtual world. That's what I think he doesn't quite say because he doesn't quite conceptualize. But this is really what he's pointing at, is that human beings will return to the point of worshiping these creations from the alien world. I just happen to think the medium for that is the virtual world. I read a lot of fiction about the subject of people kind of plugging in and they go into that world and they never really come out, because why would you? You've heard of the experience machine, I'm sure. In our libertarian times, we read about Nozick's experience machine. This is where he's really at. So anyway, Chapter 2, this tiny little chapter for me, is by far the most interesting part of the book. And I don't even think Von Däniken realizes why, but I'm proposing that he come on the show and I repitch the idea.
Now that I realize he's live, because I wasn't exactly sure until I did this, because
Barely.
all my research is done live. Of course, why do I have you on the show and not Erich von Däniken? No, we can do both. We can do both. Maybe I'll have both of you back on together, because I want you to present that theory to him live. I want his mind to be blown similarly to how mine was.
It's all there except the image itself. He thinks it's physical dinosaurs. I think it's the most beautiful song you've ever heard that's been extracted from human DNA itself inside of a virtual machine that tells you never to leave it, and you never do. That's the only difference.
Yeah, and I suppose in this case, the monster isn't necessarily this monster that we worship. Isn't the scary look? Because who wants to worship the scary looking scorpion creature or whatever it might be? But
you want to worship a sexy song.
Exactly. You want to worship the most blissful experience of your life, or whatever is granting you that blissful experience. If that blissful experience, if it's a song for you, if it's 72 virgins or whatever your best time you can imagine is going to be, and if you get it just by plugging in, why would you even want to come to the real world?
I wouldn't. Well,
no,
maybe
this is
I
actually
would. We'll have to figure out by the end of the episode.
This is starting to sound very appealing to me, to be honest.
And that's the unfortunate part. Now, we have to go all the way back to the beginning, because again, as I said, chapter 2 pops out of nowhere, and then leaves quicker than lightning. I don't know if he reconnects it at the end of the book. I think he probably finds a way to, because he seems to wrap up trends that he does. He's not very clear in his writing.
He's very like, what his point is the whole time. It's never really in question, but he's very much like, it seems like he's sort of seeing shiny objects as he's writing the book. He's like, hold on a second, I can write about this. And he's like, you know what? It's awesome. Chimeras. And he just goes into a chapter. Then he's like, anyway, what was I talking about? Mayan calendar?
Yeah.
Back to that.
Mm-hmm. Very podcast-like. Podcast-like.
He wrote in the fashion that Timeline Earth podcasts, I would say.
He chooses in this book, and again, I haven't read Chariots of the Gods, so I really don't know if he ever gets to this. But he chooses the site of his research to be a place in the jungles of Brazil. Man, that wine has a lot of tannins in it. I need to drink some water. Hold on. Okay.
The tannins.
Bolivia. I'm taking you into the jungles of Bolivia.
All right, take me on an audio adventure. I'm going to close my eyes and picture this.
Yeah, so picture the verdant greens, the roping woods and forests. You can hear the beep, 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 one of those things in there. There's a small monkey jumps past your vision. Bolivia. In the heart of Bolivia there lay a monument. Picture it. Stones of enormous scale. I'm talking 100 tons. The craftsmanship on the stones as you approach the stones is magnificent. Swirling lines and swastikas, snakes and lizards, all kinds of stuff carved in a way, in a form of craftsmanship that is far beyond the possibilities of the surrounding architecture from the same, supposedly, era.
I gotta tell you, I don't know if we need the metaverse. I can close my eyes and listen to Bird narrate, and I'm in the metaverse. I am here right now.
I hit a gong.
Continue.
There's that thing that they always tap. Now you think to yourself, you actually look up at the sky, and you think to yourself, this can't be from here, this place. Up on those Bolivian highlands, how did they even get the stones up here? How did they cut them with such precision? Did the people of the place known as Pumapunku have contact with alien gods? Did the ancient Tiwanaku people, which is what they're called, stumble upon a forgotten technology? The whole site, if you Google it, Pumapunku, it is covered in a veil of strange mysteries. Check it out. There's cosmic signatures all over the place. There's peeling layers.
While you describe it, I'm going to actually use technology, and I'm going to...
Can you throw it up on the screen? Yeah. Throw a Pumapunku up on the screen.
Throw a little Pumapunku up
This place is marvelous. 100-ton stones horked up the side of a mountain in the jungles of Bolivia. That's how you have to say it for it to be convincing. There are many theories, obviously, on how they were moved and how they were placed. And you would think that archaeology is so concerned about how they got up there. It's ridiculous. Here's what you need to be concerned with. And you've heard this before if you've ever listened to anything about the pyramids in Egypt. The technology is there. Pulleys, levees. That's fine. But what doesn't make sense is the craftsmanship on the actual stones. The craftsmanship on the stones, and listen, I'm not a geologist. I don't work with stone. I can bear. Look at this. Look at the craftsmanship on these stones. 100-ton stones, craftsmanship born into the rock. What you see? Okay, what you see right there.
There we go. Well, this is the best we can do.
What you see right there, that is a form of craftsmanship that both predates its introduction to the region and is nothing like anything in the area, even after the introduction of the tradition in Mesoamerica. Why? I can't explain that. I'm not a geologist. But Erich von Däniken says that this craftsmanship is very impressive. Take a look at this one. That's like Stonehenge, but it's on top of a large mountain, 100-ton stones. Pulleys, levees. Humans could have done this. But what they couldn't do, Mark, give me that close-up one right there, the hole. Give me the close-up one right there. That's perfect. Yeah. This is craftsmanship that is unreal. Are you seeing the unrealness of the craftsmanship?
It's wild, man. And
fucking
realize how big that is, too.
It's gigantic. Yes, you can fit 2 or 3 dowries into the center of that hole.
You want to see what Erich von Däniken would call an alien? I would say right there. Now that, honestly...
And that's the guy.
That looks like the guy from Mexico. The alien body from Mexico.
That is the guy. Okay, so this brings us to chapter 2. You got to keep this on the screen because this is absolutely
I would
key.
like to make it even bigger than it is, but I'm not sure how.
If you can make it bigger, it'll really sell the point.
That would be great.
Look at this. Look at this image. You got to be watching this on video. You gotta turn off the audio and go watch the video because Mark has pulled up something that should be tucked away in the Vatican Library. Regular people like you and me aren't ready to see this kind of stuff. Well, there you go. You can see it on the screen.
I'm going to work on making
what you're seeing on the screen is craftsmanship like you've never seen before. And this time, this leads us to chapters 1 and 2, the related chapters. Chapter 1 is called A Base Camp for the Gods. Mm-hmm. Okay? A Base Camp for the Gods. Why is it called that? The chapter concerns itself.
This is the one that I think lines right up with the, with the sun.
This is the calendar. Right. This is okay. We're going to get to this one. Firstly, you got to know, and many of us do, that von Däniken is diving into the Incan culture. This is in Bolivia, in a city that is said to have been constructed overnight by divine beings. There's a precise placement of these giant slabs of stone. I'll put it back up in a minute. Continue. Incredible stuff. The calendar of Tiwanaku, the stones are the calendar. And it's believed that these stones date back 15,000 years. This is insane. Now, there was a Nazi whose name was Hans Hobiger.
That is the most Nazi of Nazi names. That's amazing.
Hans Hobiger was a mystic.
All right, now it's bigger.
Look at the size of that thing. Hans Hobiger was a mystic in some sort of Nazi mystical order, and posited the cosmic theory of cataclysm, which involved celestial bodies clashing into planets, ice usually, clashing into planets and just changing the planets forever, leading to global cataclysms during the moonless era of the Earth's history. Which this is key here. During the moonless era, it was believed that there were different beings on the Earth, ruling the Earth. Giants, okay? There were regular-sized people, but there were giants. So they call the thing that you pulled up before, the thing that looks like Stonehenge, the gateway of the sun. 27,000 years before Christ, it is said to have been placed there and contains within it a calendar that accurately predicts the length of a year in days, 365.271 something, or something like that. Von Däniken takes the obscure findings at this site and he ties them to Hobiger's theories. Hobiger is working with when the moon was attached to the planet Earth's orbit, which he says is something like 15 or 18,000.
Now I got production
This
value.
is the calendar. This is the calendar here. Hobiger says the Earth gets its moon around 15,000 years ago. That's right, when this calendar was created. So he postulates that before the moons existed, there were different littler moons, and they all caused global catastrophes when they landed on the planet. During the moonless period, when there were no moons, which he estimates 138,000 years of time is this moonless period, giant kings ruled over the Earth until about the current moon's capture of 14,000 years ago, which supposedly in itself triggers the global cataclysm known as the Ice Age. So there's a couple guys that you need to know. There's also Edmund Kist. He was a follower of Hobiger. He focuses on the object that you're looking on directly. So this is that thing that's 27,000 years old.
The world ice theory is what his overall theory was.
The world ice theory. The whole planet gets iced out, but it's the Ice Age. It's exactly the same time period. It's that 14,000 year ago mark. And then you get down to 11,000 years and you have the big biblical flood.
Did you know that Hobiger received his vision of the universe, and his theory is related to the idea that ice is the basic substance of all cosmic processes, and ice moons, ice planets, and something called global ether, which, by the way, is also made of ice, had determined the entire development of the universe. But
yes,
and it says he did not arrive at his ideas through research. No, he arrived at his ideas by receiving a vision in 1894, and he later published a book about the theory that he received in the vision in 1912, which now that same theory that came from Hobiger's vision about ice is being connected to von Däniken's own theories about ancient aliens. Boom.
So, and it even goes deeper than that. Now, I could go off on a rabbit trail about this, but I'm going to try not to. His ice planet theory... His ice planet. So there was a guy whose name was, I think it was like Bachman or so, I don't remember. He's the guy who came up with the theory of entropy. It's one of the laws of thermodynamics. Basically, it led to all these theories about how everything is getting colder and eventually entropy will burn out all the residual energy and heat in the earth as things get further and further separated apart. This is a calling. Oh, by the way, he's not, after he puts this theory out, everybody has a thought on it. Blavatsky talks about it when she says that the human soul comes from the cold, goes back into the cold. This guy talks about, they're all talking about the cold. It all ties into this early theosophic view on the evolution of the universe. These guys talk about it too, but it's only semi-related to the development of the moonless era and the kings, but it is in there. It's all in there. What's important is the giants who come from the land of the cold. This is basically every theory on giants that you can find. All says that they came from space or they came from the cold. You see it in Norse mythology. There's a cow that all the humans came from. You just can't
picture giants hanging out on like Miami Beach. You know, it's just way too hot if you're a giant. You're going to be somewhere cold.
Small guys hang out in hot areas and large guys hang out in cold areas. This is basic. He goes through all of the various theories of giants roaming the earth. You've got mentions of giants everywhere in the Bible: Genesis, Deuteronomy, Samuel, Chronicles. Characters like Goliath and Og, the king of Bashan. You know Og. There's also in all kinds of different Greek texts. You have the Argonautica, which the movie Jason and the Argonauts is based on, 1963. Watch that movie. It's got the greatest CGI ever of all time. Also, the Odyssey, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Then you got the Book of Enoch, the Popol Vuh, which is the
von
Mayan.
Däniken also does reference the Book of Enoch quite a bit in the early chapters.
A lot.
Yep.
Yes, because that's what they all, this is, again, he probably pioneered referencing the Book of Enoch, actually.
Probably.
That's where they get all their alien stuff from.
Some of that stuff was only found, I think, with the Dead Sea Scrolls, like somewhere in the 1900s, right? Yeah, so it's relatively new in terms of when he was writing his original books, not these books.
Right. And so there's also, what is it called? The Akashic Record. Yes. Dude, that's where Hobinger got his knowledge of the moons, is from the Akashic Record, which it's not a book. It's just a source of knowledge.
I want to look that up on Amazon. How much is the Akashic Record on Amazon?
Akashic Record,
yeah,
$40.
The idea of the Akashic Record is one that's kind of been, it's been in a lot of different sort of esoteric religions and philosophies and whatnot. But it's basically the same idea that explains, if you believe in this sort of thing, any sort of vision or knowledge of the universal knowledge that people can gain through visions and through insights or what have you, not gained through research, but gained through direct downloading of the knowledge. And where that knowledge comes from is the Akashic Record, which essentially contains all the knowledge of everything that's ever happened in the universe. And in theory, if we think about angels and spiritual beings and this sort of thing, the idea is that they have access, they have instant download basically to this information. So yeah, a spirit, a demon, what have you, they can come to you and they can present you information about any fucking thing because they have the access to the Akashic Record. And the idea of some of these people that get information from visions, it's basically the same idea. Some of it perhaps directed by other types of entities or whatnot, who knows, but it's the same idea that they're getting that information. They're not learning it. They're downloading it essentially.
So there's all of these theories about these intelligent giants in every religion that you can imagine. He interprets it, as you said, in many different ways, calls on the Book of Baruch, which specifies the number of giants on the planet. Pretty interesting. Then there's also hard evidence. There he is. There's hard evidence of giants. And thank you so much for pulling this image up, because if you'll notice, he's carrying two extremely large hand axes. This is key for his research. The hand axes that have been discovered, first of all, those hand axes that he's holding right there, this is in southern Mexico and Central America. These structures are found.
There we go. We can even zoom in.
Syria, that's great. Going a little further, even you can see his little feet.
Like these are the oops, hold on.
Those are the axes.
Right, this, and then his hand
so
is like
those
right
are
here.
the axes.
Hands right here.
Axes of unusually large size have been found in Syria and Morocco. It's the same sized axes. They found axe heads in Nice, France, weighing 9 pounds. Axe heads, 9 pounds.
The head, just the head.
Some of them were 14 inches long and weighed 11 pounds. In eastern Morocco, they found them. Giant axe heads. Why did they find giant axe heads? Because there were giants who used them to chop stuff down. That's his theory. That's what he says. They found the giant axes because there were giants who needed to chop stuff down. So they needed axes that were for oversized people. And so
for the giant trees that were also around back then.
The giant trees. And actually, you're absolutely right about that.
I know. I'm not joking in any way. I'm a big giant tree theorist.
Giant trees. And so there's a guy named Seurat, Denis Seurat. He's a French guy, if you couldn't tell. He has been doing research, and he has found oversized humans in Germany, Tanzania, in Java. They even found creatures known as the Megalanthropus africanus, which basically translates to the huge black guy, and the Megathropicus paleovanicus, which translates to the huge white guy. So they have found both of these giant guys, and that's by the way, literal translation.
Yeah.
Literal translation. The giants that prehistory are all over the place. The first one that they found in 1936 was a German anthropologist. His name was Kohn Larsen, and they found it in Lake Eyasi in Tanzania.
Like you're accessing the Akashic record with all this knowledge.
Dude, they found these are my notes are my notes contain within them the truth. Yeah, my notes contain within them the truth. They have found humans and dinosaurs living together 90 million years ago. They found things from 90 million years ago that indicate that humans and dinosaurs were living together. So it blows up the whole theory about the 15,000-year-old moon. Basically blows the whole theory up. We're talking about something much older, even though the notion of the climatic catastrophes, it's possible, it cannot possibly be attributed to the moon. So there's got to be something else that's causing the giant global cataclysms that we're seeing. He barely touches back on this in the next chapter. But by the way, that was chapter 1. So that's how he opens. And we're at 45 minutes. We did a little of chapter 3. And look at that structure.
It's gorgeous.
That structure is unlike anything near it other than things exactly like it.
It's wild, man. I mean, this is way more impressive than Stonehenge. If you look at like all the,
because you can't really, you can't see the scale of it.
So many of them.
It is way bigger than Stonehenge.
See if we can.
It's way bigger than Stonehenge. And prehistoric Mesoamerican people were like 4'5". Generally, they were very small, strong folk, but not very large. So it's even more impressive than the slightly taller people in Ireland who also did the Stonehenge thing. Oh, except that was made by giants too, because giants were the ones who put these things down. That's his theory. But I just want to state in the middle of this, I don't believe anything coming out of my mouth right now, but I'm just trying to give von Däniken the proper exposition.
I think you present his theories better than he presents his theories, because he doesn't do he kind of like, he like you said, this is just chapter 1, and he kind of the whole basis of his book is about the Mayan calendar, but it's almost just like sort of a part of a chapter. It's not really he comes back to it, but he doesn't come back to it in this really satisfying conclusion of a way. He just kind of lets it dangle, and he's like, well, there's a bunch of different calendars. There's a bunch of calendars. I don't know, something's going on, but he does show that the calendars are all right. And it's like one of these, but it kind of reminds me of like these gematria things. Have you ever seen these gematria things where they're like, oh, you take this word and then you put it in the thing, and then, but if you don't like it, it's like, don't worry, you just got to use the other code. And if you use that one, then that's the one you use. But there's like 40 of them in these gematria code things. And they'll use things where they take it from 7 different codes, because that's what they had to do to get the end message that they wanted to get from the gematria. Yes. So it kind of reminded me of that a little bit. I'm not saying it's the same, but it reminded me of something along those lines. Like, yeah, I guess if you have 15 different ways to look at the calendar, then you combine them all together, you might find it being right at some point.
So the whole point about the cold stuff, everything is cold, is the idea that God is a manifestation of the cosmos. This is how he opens up the second subchapter of chapter 1. God as universe is a theory that a lot of people are familiar with. He connects it to black hole theory and the proliferation of what are known as baby universes. So this idea of cosmic birth and rebirth through black holes, this is what establishes the calendar. This is what establishes the Mayan religion. And it promotes the idea that the universe is a place that is full of different life, cosmic life. So basically, von Däniken says Whorebigger, I think it was calling him Hoebigger. It's actually Whorebigger, by the way.
Whorebigger's the even
has
better
this
name.
idea of cosmic life forms and global catastrophes and giants. And he explains everything that I just explained to you. And this is what he says. Whorebigger came up with the idea that the universe is a form of cosmic life. And that was considered crazy talk back then. Is that megalomania, or did it have something to do with the past? That's what he writes. And that's his conclusion to the section. So he basically, you've watched Ancient Aliens, right? Where they go, these structures were put here 14,000 years ago. Was it levers and pulleys, or is there something more interesting going on? And then you cut to commercial. That's the way he writes.
That's exactly how he's writing scripts for Ancient Aliens, right? He's posing questions, but never necessarily.
Did he write the scripts for that show?
They're certainly based on his manner of writing, because it's like, present strange thing, say why we don't know exactly how it was done, present strange theory, pose question, and go to commercial. We come back and we'll do it all again. And he does.
It is outrageous.
I don't know if you caught this part in the I don't know if you read like the entire forward or his intro, but he talks about how he is personally acquainted. This is what first perked my ears about von Däniken himself. He says, I am personally acquainted with several of the men who worked on the NASA moon program, starting with Werner von Braun, Hermann Oberth, Willy Ley, Harry, I don't know any of these guys, Ernst Sullinger, whatever. The point is, I'm personally acquainted with the moon program people, including renowned Nazi, renowned scientist, Werner von Braun, the man pretty much who was brought over from Nazi Germany as part of Operation Paperclip, and essentially was brought in to create NASA, worked with Jack Parsons, very connected to the occult. And I thought it was so interesting that von Däniken is so closely associating himself with characters that always just tend to come up in these conversations. Let's just put it that way.
Yes. Yeah, that is interesting. I missed that part. Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Very strange. I don't know what he's trying to say, dude. I have to be honest. We've barely gotten into the book itself. And the truth is, it's all the stuff you've heard before. Again, chapter 1 is entirely about the giant aliens, the stone architecture and the advancedness of it, all of the attempted suppression by archaeologists, and finally the discoveries that we found in recent eras, including Pumapunku, among others, being like the new hope. He then goes into chapter 2, which I just explained to you, is basically about artificial intelligence is going to take over the world.
Only he doesn't know it.
The third chapter is all about chimeras and genetic experimentation. The fourth chapter is all about the Mayan calendar and predicting the return of the gods, which ties back into chapter 2, kind of, except he doesn't make the connection. And the final chapter, I didn't even get to. The final chapter is just a wrap-up.
It's very brief.
I looked at it really quick.
There is nothing new in the final chapter. It's just I needed. They said I had to do 30 more pages. So
yes, and so you leave the book going, I already knew all of this. I knew every one of these things. And the problem is, in my opinion, von Däniken doesn't even have the courtesy of tying the various thoughts together. He just introduces 4 different subjects in the Ancient Alien space, but he doesn't give you a reason to believe why one, was
he presents
on
contradicting theories too. He just says
That's true too.
He talks about the moon theory and all that stuff, and dedicates so much time to the world ice theory, only to pretty much later present stuff that says it couldn't have really happened that way. So I was kind of distracted by the whole world ice theory, and it seemed to be a large part of the book for having kind of nothing to do with it. I mean, it sort of has to do with this sort of hidden history of the world and everything. But I just thought it seemed like a very strange tangent to spend so much time on that in that first chapter.
It really perplexing, but I feel like, I don't know, man. It even, the problem with the book is even I've read more compelling alien theories than the guy who kind of pioneered the alien theory thing, at least the ancient alien theory thing.
I think von Däniken, rightfully, I suppose, gets credit for mainstreaming this idea, for popularizing it, for creating charity to the gods. But just like, for example, you might say I perhaps rightfully get credit for, should get credit for starting the ball rolling for the libertarian podcast world. But by no means would anyone call me the best in the history of libertarian podcasters. Maybe somebody, maybe some would. I don't know. I don't know if this is the right analogy.
Maybe they would. Maybe they would. You may also be the pioneer of the cryptid libertarian.
Erich von Däniken. I would like to be a pioneer in all these things. I really did, like you said, I really love this stuff about the chimeras, because there was one thing that caught my eye in there too, that they were talking about this guy who found all these sarcophaguses with these. Now, this to me is not necessarily, it's the jump to conclusion thing that plagues the entire Ancient Aliens theorem, is that, yes, interesting, crazy things we don't understand necessarily how they were done, other interesting theories, and then it's just like, smash it together on your own time. Like, we're not gonna show you how they are definitely connect. We're just gonna tell you people think this stuff, and we found this stuff. And that's kind of the same thing here, though. There's this part where they're talking about they found the sarcophagus with these bandaged bulls, and they said it seems to be just one single bull, but they found the bones of 7. This is in the chimera part. We found the bones of 7 animals, including one huge old bull. So they concluded that a third animal had to have 2 skulls. Now, I don't know. This is just what they find from finding a bunch of bones. Like, they could have just not brought the other bones in. Like, I don't think just because you have too many skulls for bones means that necessarily means that the bull had 2 skulls. But I do get a kick out of some of these sort of just connections that they want us to make, because they say 2. He just says like 2 skulls. What do you think that means, everybody? I'm like, it could mean yes. One interpretation is they created something with 2 skulls. Another one is that there's just 2 skulls down there. Like,
yeah, right. So here's what I'm gonna get. This is my review of the book.
Okay.
In terms of trying to be fair about what is presented, I feel that von Däniken mostly keeps to the subject of the Mayan civilization, but there's a lot about the Incan civilization and Pumapunku and the art. So this is more about Mesoamerican and South American civilizations, and that's what the subject of this book is about. And he does mostly a good job of presenting the factoids that make those civilizations more interesting than a lot of people give them credit for being. But he doesn't in any way, in my opinion, demonstrate that anything that he's saying about extraterrestrials is true.
Right.
So here's the pluses. And
it's like Graham Hancock stuff, except Graham Hancock doesn't say it must have been aliens. He presents his own kind of theories too, but he actually has evidence for that stuff and kind of shows you the way.
I think his theories are far more compelling. I'm much more compelled by the Atlantis idea and the prior human civilizations than I am in any way. As a teenager, aliens was the coolest thing
I could think of, but now ancient, smarter humans is way more fascinating.
Way more interesting to me, and there's more evidence that Atlantis was a real place with a real human population. When we get to the point where nautical archaeology is really able to investigate that place, we are going to find something there of interest where these stories came from. It may not have been actually, in the original Atlantis theory, I read a book all about Atlantis. The original Atlantis theory doesn't even claim that they're particularly more advanced than us, just that they were healthier, just that they had some pretty good innovations in terms of animal husbandry and in terms of agriculture, and that they were very strong people physically in that they didn't practice any metallurgy, and they could only be harmed by metal objects. So there's a little bit of a mythology there. But all that it basically says is that
a werewolf twist to them, then what they can only be harmed by metal. Wow.
They can only be harmed by metal objects. So they mostly were going to war with like sticks and stuff, so they couldn't really kill one another. It's like elves, basically. It's more like a civilization of extremely powerful humans. This is more compelling to me than giants from another solar system come down and they build a bunch of structures and then they kind of like disappear and leave. But back to the thesis of the book, or whatever, the merits of the book. First of all, I think it is really compelling to take a look at some of the craftsmanship on the stones. Again, I don't know anything about stones, but I do know that when people are presented with this information who are of some standing in those spheres, they are impressed by the craftsmanship. And so I am similarly impressed. Fair enough. Also, that the universe is a living organism. The suggestion there is some theological, whatever, boring. I don't care about that part. The idea of catastrophism, I think, is something that isn't given nearly enough credit up until like 5 years ago, when the Joe Rogan Experience is really started putting these guys on to finally talk about this stuff in a platform that people respected. So that's pretty good. Furthermore, those stones are really fucking big. It's really interesting how they got up there. I don't know how they got up there. Also, the chimeras, I don't know what's going on there. I'm just going to be honest. I don't know what's going on there. I have my theory about it being something to do with AI controlling the world, and it's an apocalyptic prediction. I don't even think he thinks that, so half point on that.
There is a compelling part in the Chimera section that I highlighted that I want to point out. And he actually says, evidence of chimeras in the dim and distant past would be indisputable, he says, would be indisputable evidence of alien intervention. He says that would be indisputable. To me, that's like a big example of just, you have your theory, you say this thing, and then you say, if that's true, my theory is correct, without showing us why. But he does provide why. He provides a paragraph of explanation. So I'm just going to read this to you. He says, because our forefathers, all those thousands of years ago, didn't have a clue about genetics. How do you know? Because the ancient texts and the illustrations tell us so. And because the ETs had he's assuming ETs in his explanation for why ETs. He says because the ETs had a compelling motive for doing it, the creation of specially adapted life forms for other planets. And this is where I don't have any problem with theorizing about wildly. I love wild theorization about whatever. Yeah. My problem is when von Däniken, I mean, he says something like, this would be indisputable. If we find a chimera, then that proves aliens. No, it proves a chimera. It proves a crazy thing that doesn't necessarily have any connection to your other theory that you have here. And you're not really presenting a reason why. So in his reason why, he's saying because the ETs, I think it's at the end of the chapter.
Okay, so here's the thing. Yeah. This is where the connection. Okay, now I'm starting to. Maybe there is more to this book than I thought, because as you just explained that, in my head I went, oh wait, the invisible cord. He does construct these connections he never talks about. If you'll recall, in the same chapter, in chapter 2, which is the chapter I went balls deep on, chapter 2, the whole point about chimeras being evidence for extraterrestrial beings is actually set up. And again, he never explains this explicitly. He expects you to hear into his mind and hear what triggered one thought coming after the next thought. But the first thought that he has is, isn't it interesting that there's all of these entities across various mythological and religious corpuses that talk about monstrous beings and how they were created and they came down from the heavens. So he's got a couple of presuppositions that the heavens are the cosmos. He's got another presupposition that the creatures were physical things because they're attested to as physical things in all the various mythologies. That's pretty solid, fine. That is what he goes and then says, if we did find evidence of one of these chimeras, it would be clear that it was extraterrestrials, because he's already set up in his own mind that all these mythologies are talking about how they came down from the cosmos, but they can't be gods because they're physical. And he's got those built-in presuppositions
into his explanation for everything. And he's assuming we're with him and all this along the way.
Right. And for me, I do, and again, this is actually the point that we're uncovering. For me, the monstrous beings are really interesting. I do find them really interesting. If we did find evidence of them, it would definitely tell us something. Right. But I'm definitely not willing to say that they're just like aliens. Right. Maybe they came from inside the Earth. Maybe they were before humans on it. I have no clue. I don't know anything about it.
I can think of 57 different theoretical explanations for chimeras. All of them are, I don't know if they're all more interesting than aliens, but they're at least as interesting as aliens. Because at this point, aliens isn't even interesting anymore because it's just what we get for everything from these guys.
Right. Ancient aliens, Mark, by the way. That's what's key is not just aliens, but they have to be giant and ancient and they have to be Arabic. That's usually the three characteristics is that they're always got those like Sumerian beards and they are gigantic and super tall and they carry bags.
Hold on a second. Giant, ancient, questionable, Arab. Are we just talking about Little Amal here?
Did you know we had multiple listeners have now attended Little Amal events?
I did.
Live?
I heard that today, and I did want to bring this up as among many things. Timeline Earth is also the world's foremost Little Amal tracking podcast. Maybe just you'll do a 30 seconds on what is Little Amal for people that don't follow her all the time.
Oh man!
But also, I see a connection here because, as we see in a lot of modern times, there is a lot of this Nephilim giant imagery worship everywhere. And what is Little Amal if not a giant Nephilim? I mean, one of these ancient giants that Von D refers to.
Did you see the image of the guy inside of her? Did you see this?
Yeah. That's even more. That's not disturbing at all.
It's so odd. The guy inside.
You talk about it, and I'm gonna pull up Little Amal just for
Little Amal. All right. For those of you who don't know, my podcast has been tracking this
the guy inside
public event. It's called like Little Amal's Walk. It's a effigy of a Syrian migrant that is piloted by a white guy from England, and she goes around to various events and gatherings, and she just is homeless. That's the gimmick. Is she walks around homelessly at the events in order to connect with various communities and to express, and there she is, and there's the guy inside of her to express.
So this guy operates her from in there, I guess?
And he's got a steering wheel, which I don't really know how the steering wheel works.
Do you really need wheels on it? I
think it's for the head, but I'm really not sure. See, this is kind of why I'm interested. So next week, we're going to get the listeners on who went to attend the event, because I have like mechanical questions that I need answers to. Like, it seems like the hands are connected and puppeted by different people, but
is there any reason you or I or anybody can't interview this guy that's inside Little Amal? He doesn't seem like he'd be, So this is like a climate change thing, though, right?
That's like a good question.
Is that what she's going around? She's trying to tell everyone
it's more like
dead Syrian children, or it's something like that, right? There is a reason.
It's more of a accept migrants kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
It's like Arab migrants are coming from that part of the world to various countries, and she's here to show you how she's just a little girl, all your little girls.
She's just a giant, frightening little girl.
It's a Greta Thunberg experiment, kind of.
The puppet is a symbol of human rights, especially those of refugees, according to organizers. Yeah. Her journeys are festivals of art and hope that draw attention to the huge numbers of children, the huge numbers of giant children fleeing war, violence, and persecution, each with their own little man operating inside them. That's not the full quote.
88,000 BC. The Nephilim babies are being driven out. There's migrant Nephilim babies everywhere, and they are building lots of calendars all over the planet.
little Nephilim babies with each with their own interpretation of the calendar. One of these is right.
Unbelievable.
All right. Well, I'm going to seamlessly just do this and decide that we're already hopping in the smoke-filled room. At some point, I'm going to let Bobby, my editor, figure out where things ended,
we can
where
do
they
like
begin.
Maybe we can do like a. Hi, everyone. That was the full episode of the Marc Clair Show. Please now go over to the Patreon to listen to the thing.
All right, friends. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Bird from Timeline Earth. Guess what? I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but we kept going. We kept rambling. We kept going on about our theories. We even dovetailed further into the concept of AI and Bird's interesting thoughts about how it might tie into the machine elves that are often reported during DMT hallucinogenic experiences. We really go off in some wild directions. So if you enjoyed this main show, do yourself a favor, do yourself a solid. Hear the full episode. Why are you depriving yourself of 1/3 of the show? Because you get an extra 30 minutes every single week with the smoke-filled room bonus segment that you get by becoming a Marc Clair Show premium subscriber. You can do it on Patreon. You can do it on Subscribestar. You can do it on Rockfin, where you get to subscribe and get the bonus content of a bunch of other different creators, many of whom have been on the show, like Brad Binkley, Isaac Weishaupt, Sam Tripoli, Jay Dyer, Monica Perez, Courtney Turner, just a ton of creators over there. Charlie Robinson on Rockfin. You get them all the bonus content for the price of one. I don't care how you support me. Even if you just watch the show, tell people about it, leave Apple reviews, 5-star reviews on Apple. Those are very helpful. But at least get yourself a sample. At least go get a taste on Subscribestar. If you go to Subscribestar, you search the Marc Clair Show, you can give yourself a week trial. So you can dive through the full edition of this show, at least this episode. If you enjoyed it, I recommend doing that. And I'm pretty sure you're going to enjoy the content on all of these episodes. Go check it out. MarcClair.com gives you all of the links you could possibly need to support and find this show anywhere and everywhere. That's Marc Clair, MarcClair.com. Until next time, my friends, in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.